Alright, been a while. I've actually made a couple other videos. Haven't turned them on. But I got a phone call yesterday that I thought would be helpful, right? Because most of us here are probably diesel guys. So this was from a guy that owns a gas truck. So I know nothing about this other than I was pretty sure that it's spark ignition. He's called before, texted before to use the dyno. I have just like booked out turbocharger work wise. It seems like 3 to 6 weeks, and anytime it starts to get down where I'm like, oh, maybe like finish this all up in like a week and a half, have a little bit of time to play around with the dyno, phone calls, direct messages, stuff gets busy again, which is awesome. I like to stay busy. I like doing turbocharger stuff. Been doing a lot of cool stuff lately, making horsepower. It just outdid the competition by 35 horsepower with 7, 10, with a 4 millimeter smaller turbocharger, both on the compressor and the turbine wheel. Outdid them by 35. And that was an overnight thing. This took 4 months to figure out how to do that. So yeah, it's been crazy doing some more S400 things. But how about this request? Spark ignition motors. We try and separate these things out from diesel engines and everything else because it's a different combustion system. It all operates the exact same way. We're turning fuel, taking the BTUs in the fuel, turning that into pressure, turning that pressure into work. All right, so it's all pretty much the same thing. It doesn't matter what the fuel type is. We can't break physics. So started asking questions. Actually asked the questions in the wrong order. The first thing, start off with dynos, talking about dynos, and he thought that his dyno power output was long. That's why he wants to use my dyno, because the dyno plate he's using is only letting him use second gear due to driveline length. I'll let you use whatever gear you want, just don't break my stuff. And I told him it'll probably pick up 40, 50 horsepower, maybe more in the next gear up. We pick up, depending on what it is, because this scales anywhere from 40 to like 130 horsepower, going from like third to overdrive, as an example, direct drive to overdrive. We'll gain power with lower gear ratios, but we'll lose power with larger tires, stuff like that. Because I told him all the dyno knows is the rate of acceleration of change of the roll versus time versus weight. So that's how it calculates horsepower, and then it mathematically figures out torque. So it's a horsepower reading device, and then it computes the torque output because those two have to follow one another as long as you have a tach signal. So that power output was low, and it does kind of sound low, right? It's boosted, made 421 horsepower on this dyno, but I was telling him, I was like, all dynos read differently. The best way to do it is to use specific fuel consumption, because there's so much BTUs per pound of fuel. If we know how many pounds of fuel we're putting in, we should be able to kind of figure out if it's right or wrong on the horsepower output. That's the first thing we did, right? So he has handwriting is pretty terrible, and I can't read this backwards very well. So has 57-pound injectors running at 90% duty cycle. We do not know. I know he does, and he told me, but I forget. I didn't investigate it too much. Pressure deltas from fuel injection pressure versus manifold pressure. So just going to put that out there. We don't know what that is. So this is just checking this out. So 57 times 0.9 times 8 injectors, because this is rated an hour. That gives us 410 pounds fuel an hour. So if we go look at that for boosted applications, pretty consistent. That'll be around 0.7, 0.6, 0.6, 0.75. Just put in 0.7. That's 586 wheel horsepower is what it should see. Well, he's at 421. Right, so we are a ways off. That's a problem. And it's a problem if you're looking for a number. Now, I don't know how fast this thing is down the track. I don't know what its quarter mile or eighth mile time is. The dyno tune seems to be tuned decent, but there's a but we're going to get to. And it seems like watching other dyno tuning videos, this seems to be kind of very consistent. We're going to get there. So if he wants to see this number, he might have to go to a different dyno. And I don't even know if mine will put this out or not. I don't do a lot of spark ignition stuff on my dyno. So I don't have a backlog of known fuel quantities versus power outputs like I do with diesels on my dyno. I know where I want to be with the diesels on my dyno. For me, it's around 0.4 to 0.5. It's going to be in that range. Other dynos read differently. That's how I figured out how to solve the this dyno makes more horsepower problem is by if we just take fuel flow and horsepower and just look at that over and over and over and over and over versus what a good tune-up is, like it's as good as it's going to get, and then you just repeat it over and over, you'll build a backlog, and that backlog will help in future stuff with making this right. So I don't know what his backlog is. I don't know what it looks like. But we can kind of look at this and be like, well, if this is true, we could say, yes, the power output is way missing. So the next question is it fast on the street? You know, is the dyno just not outputting the number you're looking for, which is mainly what they want. You know, they want the printout so they can post it, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you might have to drive a ways to find the dyno that does that. So the next thing, when I was thinking about it, there's a really easy shortcut to this, and I miss it because I always miss the easy things. Take the normally aspirated horsepower. Because what I asked him, I was like, have you dynoed it normally aspirated? Like in, you know, my motor in the truck, dynoed it, what's it make? And he did. Made 299. So the best tune up it did 299. Hit the tire. I'm like, all right, 1 second. How much boost? He's like 6 pounds. So it's down here. Just use 14. 20 divided by 14, 1.42. So 299 times the pressure ratio, 1.42, is 427 wheel horsepower. This is supercharged, right? So 6 pounds of boost cost you flywheel horsepower, and it's not showing up in the output, 421, 427. That looks really good. So now we're getting into problem solving, right? So this thing actually appears to be making the power it's supposed to make based on the normally aspirated horsepower. So in this scenario, the problem is the normally aspirated horsepower needs to be higher, or the boost needs to go up. Because we're at 100 degrees after the intercooler, 6 pounds of boost, that's pretty cool. It's 0.07 pounds per cubic foot estimate. Without the intercooler, so non-intercooled makes 10 pounds of boost, but it's 170 degrees. So that's 0.063 pounds per cubic foot instead of 0.07 pounds per cubic foot. I don't know if this comes out to a negative net loss or if it just comes out and balances itself out. So you get a 1.71 PR that the air is being compressed by, but the air is considerably lighter than it is at 100 degrees. Less dense, however you want to call it. So now for kind of like the final interesting thing, which is you can look at this. We're putting in a lot of fuel, not getting a lot of return on investment with the fuel. The next thing is this thing is so rich that it's smoking, and we've all seen pro mods when they leave the line or they're spooling up. They tend to smoke a little bit, or right out of the hole they can smoke a little bit. They're running very, very rich right there, and this thing's running really, really rich up towards the top end, and the data supports that, right? So we're seeing 90% duty cycle with 57-pound injectors. That's enough. That's 410 pounds fuel an hour, but it's only producing 421 horsepower. So we can see before we even had an AFR gauge or looked at the smoke coming out, that it's going to be really rich. There's a really good chance that that's true. So I thought you guys might enjoy this. As far as troubleshooting, right, the person called up and said the person's only dynoing the truck in second gear. I think my power output is low. And I agreed at first that the power output was low because I didn't have a lot of data. I didn't know how much boost pressure it was. And the first thing I looked at was the fuel injected by weight, because that's always usually a pretty good tell. If a dyno's reading high or low. As far as the motor produces the horsepower, is the dyno outputting it on a print sheet or not? Don't really know. So when I first looked at that, it did. It looked like it was shorting him, what, 160 something horsepower? Yeah, a lot. He said the truck's fast. But then we looked at the normally aspirated power output and multiply it by the pressure ratio, and the power looks like what it should. So the power might still be shy, right? It still might be low. And you might want to go find a different dyno to get a better looking printout. But the dyno is being consistent. It's multiplying the horsepower by the pressure ratio like it's supposed to. The engine displacement is dynamically getting larger by the ratio of the increase in atmospheres that the engine is breathing into. The fuel tune-up does look very rich. I don't know how efficient the combustion chamber is on this motor. I believe it's a Chevy of some kind. Seems like it shouldn't be that bad, even if you're a Ford guy, right? 0.97. You're getting into like alcohol territory here with that one. So that seems strange. I don't know if the tuner. My best, really poor estimation, tuner's doing it to keep the motor alive, right? Because he doesn't want to be that guy that hurts a motor. Timing's only at 17 degrees according to him. That seems low because at the NA one at 299 horsepower, timing was 25 degrees. At only 6 pounds of boost, I don't see why we shouldn't be pretty close still to that 20 to 24 degree mark. 17 to pulling that much timing for only 6 pounds of boost seems awfully safe, right? But what the tuner's probably doing is playing it really safe. He doesn't want this motor to die. The owner does want more horsepower and believes it should make more horsepower, and maybe, and then it probably is. Good chance it is, right? The dyno just isn't outputting it for posting on the internet. But at the same time, this person's spent a lot of time and money on this motor, and the sentiments that he made to me was that he doesn't want the motor to get hurt, yet he wants the motor to make more horsepower. And looking at this data, I would put more timing in it, and I'd increase the boost pressure, is what I would do. It sounds like too the intercooler needs to get changed out to something that flows better. Sounds like there's going from 10 psi or 11 psi before the intercooler down to 6 afterwards, with only a 70-degree change in the IAT. That's a lot of boost pressure loss for only a 70-degree change, right? Like on the diesel stuff, I'm really used to seeing a 300-degree drop, and that lines up better with the cooling air dropping the pressure to that extent. So intercooler sounds like it's a problem. Doesn't sound like it's the reason why it's down on power. The reason why it's down on power, it really looks like it's really, really, really rich. Now it is losing boost pressure as the engine RPM increases. Once it gets past peak, that sounds like a intercooler is finally not flowing enough CFM to keep up. So the intercooler is a restriction, but it's not a restriction to the point that we can add 1.42 atmospheres, or we can be at an atmosphere of 1.42 post intercooler. So it's flowing enough to do that. So it's, 1.42 times more air than what the motor can consume, which is good because that way we can compress the air together and get the motor to consume more than it can normally aspirated. Higher flowing intercooler, if you can get it up to 10 pounds of boost, it's going to pick up more power. If you want to figure out what that was, if it's still 100 degrees afterwards, you could take 299 times 1.71. That's what it should jump up to. So I thought you guys might like this, kind of how I troubleshoot or help someone over a phone call, regardless of the fuel type, right? And I wasn't offering any tuning advice, just opinions based on what I've seen, right? I'm not a tuner. I don't even have a tuning program on a computer, but I've helped a lot of people do this. I watch a lot of stuff. I sit here all day or stand here all day, build turbochargers, and listen to other people talk about engine dynos, dyno tuning, and all that stuff, right? So we can get like general trends going on for what we're looking for. Steve Morris, Joe Simpson, um, Nelson Racing Engines, like a lot of very well known, established people um, doing stuff. But this is a dead. This was like a dead giveaway when we did the NA horsepower times the PR. It came out to 427. We're at 421. That all looks great. So the dyno is being consistent. The dyno is being fair. I asked them as long as your graphs are smooth, it's not sputtering, it's not missing. It sounds like a decent tune-up, except for that part, right? It's putting in a lot of fuel for not a lot of horsepower. Why? Don't know. I wasn't there at the dyno tuning session. I don't know why it's running that much fuel in it. It's either to be really safe, maybe something is up with the cam, something's up with the cylinder heads. Don't know. But that's a really good thing to see. Like I said, a lot of fuel, not a lot of horsepower, but horsepower times PR is lining up. So Dyno's being truthful with itself previously. It's smoking, and then looking at the specific fuel consumption ratio would say that it's smoking. That would be something that I'd probably address. Does the tuner want to address it? I don't know. It's not there for their talks or their all that fun stuff, right? So I thought this might be interesting. If you have a gas motor, you can go look this stuff up. Depending on your fuel type is what this will be. So most gasolines are like 0.5 to 0.7. I think 85 is around 0.7 to 0.9. Alcohol, methanols, looks like most good tuners and good engine builders shoot for about 135, 125 to 135, 138. And it just goes up, right? Nitromethane is going to go up even more. You got to put in a lot more fuel. Diesel wise, shoot for around 0.4. Lower is better, and they can do lower, but a lot of this is dyno dependent. So, you guys might enjoy this one. Something different than diesel stuff all the time. This is a gas engine. I don't know what gas engine it is. I'm pretty sure it's a Chevy of some kind. I don't know if it's old, new, but it's how to troubleshoot it, right? Changing dynos is probably the right idea, or get a draggy, or go to a track to validate this. That'd be the next thing, right? Because you don't have, if you have nothing to compare it against, it's really hard to say if it's right or wrong. You kind of need that track time, or like a draggy time, or something to have a comparison rather than just the dyno, especially just one dyno. And that's why they want to use my dyno. I'm just busy, and the dyno doesn't really make a lot of money. And it takes a lot of time to use it. It's a lot of fun, and I got a lot of cool tools to use on it for fun. But the main things: turbochargers, repairs, new ones, welding. A lot of welding and modifications going on lately. No, this is how you can troubleshoot your own setup if you got to go through and look at it. Knowing how much fuel you're injecting and having baseline normally aspirated numbers goes a long ways on spark ignition stuff. So, thank you. If you guys enjoyed this, have a good one.